Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with naked cherry tomato salad. That's right, if I ran a culinary school and it was this time of year, this is what we would make day one. And that's because I can't think of a better example. We're learning a classic old school culinary technique. Transform something that's totally mundane and relatively uninteresting into literally one of the most delicious things you've ever tasted. And that technique involves removing the skin, which is why these are called naked. Which I'll admit take a little bit of extra time, but that's fine because we're going to present these Amuse Bouche style and only give 3 per person. But we'll get into all that later. For now, let's go ahead and start by prepping our tomatoes. And to do that, we're going to cut a very small, very shallow X on the bottom of each tomato. And be very careful, we don't want to cut in too far. We just want to break the skin. And for me, the easiest way to do this is with a very small serrated knife. All right, straight edge knives are a little challenging with tomatoes because the skin is so incredibly tough, which is exactly why we're performing this somewhat tedious step. And by peeling these tomatoes, not only are we profoundly improving the texture, we're going to be able to marinate them without cutting them in half. All right, being able to keep these whole is really the magic behind this dish. Oh, and this would be the perfect point to mention I just got a new camera and have absolutely no idea how to use it. So please forgive and ignore any minor focusing issues. I'll figure it out as soon as I read the manual. And by read the manual, I mean watch a few videos on YouTube. But anyway, like I said, we'll go ahead and make a very shallow X with our knife, opposite the side that attached to the plant. And yes, we'll go ahead and pull off those green things as well. I call them stems, but I don't think they're stems. I think they're attached to the stem. But I am sure someone will let us know. Probably the same people that told us what that white thing on a raw egg was. And then what we'll do once our tomatoes are prepped is set up a bowl of ice water, because we're going to go ahead and dunk these briefly into boiling water to peel them. And once that's been accomplished, we're going to want to transfer those quickly into this bowl of cold water to stop the cooking. So once that's set and we have some kind of strainer to transfer them with, we can head to the stove, where we will bring some water up to a boil on high heat. And in case you're wondering, this is one of the times we don't have to salt the water. So we'll bring some plain water up to a boil, and we will carefully transfer our cherry tomatoes in. And what we'll do is we'll give them a little stir and kind of move them around a little bit. And then we're going to wait for just a few seconds until that skin starts to peel back. And I'm not going to edit this at all. You can just watch in real time, because it really does happen quick. Okay, we're not cooking these tomatoes, we're just peeling them. So after a few seconds, as soon as you see that skin start to peel back, okay, you see that? As soon as that happens, we will quickly transfer those from boiling water to ice water. And that is pretty much it. We will simply let those tomatoes cool down completely, at which point we can peel them, which is going to be super easy because the peels pretty much fall off themselves. All right, so we'll let those tomatoes sit in that ice water until they're nice and cold, at which point, like I said, we're going to remove those skins, which is really not a hard thing to do, but you do want to be very careful we don't crush these. Especially like in my case, if we're using tomatoes that were almost too ripe to use. I mean, these things were just absolutely perfect and sweet and just about to burst. Which, while incredibly delicious, does make them a little more difficult to work with. But as you've heard me say before, the food gods hate a coward. So do not use firm, underripe tomatoes just because they're easier. And mostly we're just going to use our fingers here, kind of peeling that skin back and then gently pinching it off the bottom where it attaches to the stem. And some, if not most, you'll be able to do with just your fingers. But we can also use a knife to help us out on ones where the skin is a little more attached. And what we'll do as we peel these is transfer them into a bowl so we can dress them. And by the way, there are a few things in the world of cooking that look sexier and more enticing than a bowl of peeled cherry tomatoes. I mean, come on, check that out. You can actually see the veins. And what is sexier than seeing veins? And again, the whole key to this operation is keeping the cherry tomatoes whole. Because I think everyone agrees that's the ultimate way to eat a cherry tomato. Because that way they burst in your mouth, and you get that explosion of sweet, tangy tomato flavor. And the only possible way to improve on that experience is exactly what we're doing here, removing the skins. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and peel those tomatoes and transfer them into some kind of bowl, at which point we can move on to the dressing, which in keeping with the naked tomato theme is going to be extremely simple. So for what's basically going to be a marinade, we're going to start with a little bit of sweet herb. I highly suggest mint, with basil being a close second. And we're not even going to cut it up. I just pinched off a couple small leaves and tossed them in. And then to that we will add a touch of vinegar. I'm going to go with sherry vinegar this time because my tomatoes were so incredibly sweet. But I will give you other options on the blog. We are also going to add some extra virgin olive oil, as well as a little bit of pepper. I'm going to go with just some cayenne. This time I didn't want those dark flecks of black pepper messing with the appearance. And then we'll also add a tiny pinch of salt. Not too much because we're going to finish these with some coarse sea salt. And that's it. We'll take our freakishly small wooden spoon and give this a mix. And by just slightly bruising those little mint leaves, just enough of that flavor is going to get into this dressing. And if you're wondering why mint instead of basil here, they both would do pretty much exactly the same thing, except mint is just a slightly sweeter herb than basil. So it really pairs incredibly well here, especially since this is going to be served chilled. But anyway, we're going to give that little bit of dressing a mix, at which point I'm going to go ahead and spoon that over my now completely naked tomatoes. And sure, if you want, I guess you could just dump all this in and sort of mix it up a little more aggressively. But as I mentioned, mine were so incredibly ripe and soft, I did not want to manipulate them any more than necessary. So what I did is spoon that as evenly as I could over the top, and then I gave it the old shaka. And then what we'll want to do is wrap this up and pop it in the fridge for at least 30 minutes to an hour, or until thoroughly and completely chilled. But what I like to do about halfway through is pull them out and give them a little toss, which I'm going to do very, very gently with this freakishly small silicone spatula. And man, those are looking good, and it would be very tempting to eat a couple, or 7 or 8 or 9. But don't. Otherwise, your guests are going to have no bouche to be amused by. So please have some self-control. Just give it a quick toss, rewrap it, pop it back in the fridge until, like I say, your tomatoes are completely and thoroughly chilled, at which point we can pull it out and move on to final production. And all that means is we're going to pull it out and give it a stir and basically evaluate whether we're going to add some more oil and vinegar or not, which I almost always do. So I drizzled in a little more sherry vinegar and a touch more olive oil and gave that a final mix. And once that's been accomplished, we are ready to serve. But not before I taste one of these smaller kind of smushed ones. And even though I've enjoyed this countless times, I'm never not shocked at how amazing that is. And then once we're happy with how it looks and tastes, we'll go ahead and serve that up. And no, I wasn't kidding. We're just giving 3 per person because we're doing what's called an Amuse Bouche, which is simply some kind of very small appetizer to start a meal. So I'm going to serve up exactly 3 naked cherry tomatoes, along with, of course, a little bit of that dressing and natural juices, and maybe a few drips of olive oil to shine things up. And sure, if you want, you could garnish this with a little extra fresh herb, but in keeping with the naked theme, I didn't. Of course, that kind of stuff's up to you. You are the nuclear rouge of your naked cherry tomato amuse bouche, and that is no bull, so you add what you want. And then last but not least, we will go with a little sprinkling of coarse sea salt, which always looks like a lot, but it's not, because those are giant grains. And that's it, our naked cherry tomato salad, presented as an amuse bouche, is done. And of course your friends and family are going to tease you and mock you that you serve 3 cherry tomatoes. But you know what else they're going to do? Talk about this for the rest of their lives. Because for someone that's never experienced this before, you are pretty much stunned with what you're tasting. It really is like you're tasting some new and exotic fruit for the first time. And the reason 3 is the perfect portion is because the first bite is basically shock and awe. I mean, watch people's faces as they eat that first one. They almost can't believe they're eating a cherry tomato. So they go in for the second one. And it's while they're enjoying naked cherry tomato number 2 where they realize the incredible flavor and texture is real. So real. Which brings them to cherry tomato number 3, which is of course the best tomato. Because now you know what to expect, but also in the back of your mind you realize this is the last one. Make it count. But anyway, that's it, what I'm calling a naked cherry tomato salad. No matter what else you served, no matter how amazing it came out, the thing people are going to be talking about tomorrow, and next week, and next year, were those 3 naked cherry tomatoes you did as the amuse bouche. So I really do hope you give this a try soon. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.